Hello guys, I'll be presenting the book review of Illness as Metaphor by Susan Sontag. So who was Susan Sontag? I'll show you a video.
I love being alive. I wake up every morning very grateful that I'm alive. It's more than enjoyment. I'm very happy to be alive.
She was a relentless campaigner for human rights and against war.
The most intelligent woman in America.
Critic, activist, playwright,
She
essayist.
wrote 17 books and won major awards, including the National Book Award.
She had relationships with women and she had relationships with men, and she fell in love with women and she fell in love.
Don't allow yourself to be patronized, condescended to, which, if you are a woman, happens and will continue to happen all the time, all your lives. Don't take shit. Tell the bastards off.
Okay, now what is a metaphor? A metaphor is a comparison in which one thing is said to be another without using as or like. If we are using as or like, it becomes a simile. These are some of the examples of metaphors. In her book, Susan offers this definition by Aristotle. Metaphor consists in giving the thing a name that belongs to something else. What instigated Susan to write this book? At the age of 42, she got diagnosed with breast carcinoma. For next many months, she was unable to write anything, as she went 4 subsequent surgeries and intensive chemotherapy. Her to the core. While waiting in hospital wards and waiting rooms, she observed that patients were embarrassed about their illness. There was an attached stigma or taboo to it. Patients felt as if they were outcasts. Even doctors treated cancer as if it was more than an illness. This instigated her to pick up her pen again.
While I was busy zapping the world with my mind, my body fell down.
I was told the cancer was too advanced to be likely to be curable, and that I had 6 months or a year to live.
Trying to race ahead of my death, to get in front of it.
They were being very conservative about how much chemotherapy they wanted to use. So I found a very mainstream, famous French chemotherapist who was willing to give me a lot more chemotherapy for a lot longer time. And it's really as simple as that. I didn't accept the fact that
So what is this book all about? Newsweek described it one of the most liberating books of its time. I'll start by quoting the first para of the first page. Focusing on tuberculosis, syphilis, cancer and then AIDS, Susan wishes to demystify. Sontag acknowledges that one cannot think without metaphors, but she also insists that there are some metaphors that we should consciously avoid. Identify these diseases. Sontag argues against the use of illness as metaphor. Illness, she says, should be seen at its most essential level, nothing more than a disease. It should not define one's identity. Cancer patient herself, when she was writing the book, Sontag shows how metaphors and myths surrounding certain illnesses, exceptionally cancer, add greatly to the suffering of patients. Negative connotations attached to the illness make it more shameful and disgraceful. It can influence patients' self-perspective and can cause intense shame and an inner sense of guilt, and can inhibit the patients from taking the proper treatment. Cancer, for example, has been a ruthless secret invasion, evil, invincible predator, and due to its insatiable growth, a demonic pregnancy. Sontag wants us to be more aware of these metaphors because, as she argues, they have real-world implications. Sontag says, and I quote, "The metaphors and myths, I was convinced, kill." Cancer, she argues, is not a curse, not a punishment, certainly not an embarrassment, and is highly curable if proper treatment is followed. It is just a biological phenomenon, not a moral, not a social one. Sontag has made a deliberate and pervasive use of military metaphors, a language of warfare, in her book, like patient's body is under attack, conquer the cancer, cancer cells inside, invade and colonize, agents of disease. Coming to the critical analysis part, many, like Michael Ignatieff, a Canadian author and politician, has openly acclaimed her book. Even James Patterson, who is best known for his Alex Cross series and is holding a Guinness Book of Records for being the first person to sell 1 million ebooks, reinforced Susan's central argument that cancer patients have long suffered in silence as a result of stigma attached to the neoplastic. Many referenced authors like Dennis Donoghue of New York Times critically denounced her book. Even Richard J. Evans, a British author and historian, told her work as at best simplistic, at worst naive. Sociologists Claudine Hurlist and Janine Pierret said, and I quote, "If cancer is indeed a metaphor, it is richer than Susan would like us to believe." One of the American journalists, Helen Benedict, who is best known for his writings on Iraq War, said, "A lot of people are afraid of Susan Sontag. Getting to meet her is a bit like trying to meet Joan of Arc on a day off." One of the strongest critics of hers, Camille Paglia, quoted her book as clumsy and ponderous, like a graduate school senior paper. I'll show you a video.
And so on. And I think that Sontag belongs to the generation before World War II. She doesn't watch TV, she's not into rock, and she has been passed.
She went on to...
So, what is my conclusion? Yes, I would acknowledge that the book has left profound influence on us for the understanding of disease. We might have been slower in understanding the importance of language in illness experience if the book has not come at that time. In order to better understand unknown, it appears humans employ metaphors, which allows them to critically examine their surroundings and make some sort of sense out of them. So, regarding the negative connotations, I would like to quote my own example. One of my uncles got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. I saw a random and sudden change in the behavior of people around him. Rather than a victim, a patient, or a sufferer, they made him look like a culprit who is suffering because of his own past deeds and is responsible for his own disease. I could easily empathize with the pain and suffering he went through due to that victimization. We all must have noticed that in corresponding obituaries, it is usually written, patient died of lingering illness, prolonged illness, illness of several weeks, rather than writing, patient died of cancer. The fact is that we simply do not know which phrases, if any, served as euphemisms or substitutes for cancer. Now coming to the positive sides of it. According to a study, there is a widespread use of metaphors among doctors and patients in the healthcare. Doctors use metaphors assuming body is a machine. Body is being repaired. Joint undergoes wears and tears. Patients use more vivid kind of expressions. I'm a cotton wool man. Saturn has got into her. Illness is like fire, burning pain. Symptoms are flaring up. Illness is like an attack, heart attack, asthma attack, panic attack. Patients felt relieved after telling their symptoms in their own terms, which reduced the gap between doctors and patients. This study also suggests that an understanding of metaphors is as important for doctors as it is to understand the patient's health beliefs. As Margaret Locke in Uncommon Wisdom says, in the healing process, the most important part of communication takes place at the metaphoric level. Therefore, you have to have shared metaphors. Metaphors can influence how a doctor approaches a patient, how research into possible treatment is conducted, and how patients are treated by their family and friends. Critiqued her faith in power of science to dispel myths and metaphors of disease. It is neither desirable nor possible to strip illness of its symbolic meaning. I would say that there is a fine balance between the usage of metaphor as a communication filler and the usage of metaphor as a negative connotations, and we need to maintain that balance. First, I will leave this as an open discussion as it has been for many years and as a food for thought. In the end, I would like to show a video in which Susan Sontag describes her book in her own words. Here it goes.
The oldest idea of illness, of what causes illness, is that it's some punishment, something that you actually deserve or that you've brought on yourself. My subject is not physical illness itself, but the uses of illness as a figure or a metaphor. My point is that illness is not a metaphor, and that the most truthful way of regarding illness is one most purified of metaphoric thinking. There is such a thing as accident, there is such a thing as fatality, and there is such a thing as thoroughly undeserved catastrophe.
And did you fulfill all your desires?
Certainly not.
When you lose something you can't replace, when you love someone but it goes to waste, could it be worse? Lights